Hey, 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 welcome back to Strange Mind 6. I'm your host, Ruby, and we are currently on the book of The Bizarre, Freaky Facts and Strange Stories by Varla Ventura. Before we begin, I would like to ask that you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and comment down below what are some of your favorite books or any suggestions that you have. And we're going to get right into it. So either grab a snack, grab a drink, or sit back and relax. And let's get into it, shall we? Secrets of the Voynich Manuscript. If I mispronounce anything, I do apologize. The Voynich Manuscript is a mystery that has puzzled scholars for hundreds of years. Wilfrid Voynich, a collector of rare books and manuscripts, acquired the 246-page, intricately illustrated manuscript at a Jesuit college in Frascati, Italy in 1912. The earliest confirmed owner was George Baresht, an obscure alchemist who lived in Prague in the early 17th century, believed to date from the late Middle Ages or the Renaissance period. The Voynich manuscript is written in a language and script that has yet to be deciphered by the scores of linguistics, cryptographers, and historians who have attempted to crack it. The text contains about 35,000 words, derived from what seems to be an alphabet of 20 to 30 distinct glyphs, although some of the glyphs appear only once or twice. The words and glyphs are unlike any other known in linguistic history. Equally curious are the images. The manuscript is densely illustrated with drawings of unknown botanical and pharmaceutical specimens and curious astronomical diagrams. Although nobody knows who wrote the manuscript, it has been attributed to 16th century English mathematician and astrologer John Dee. Dee's companion Edward Kelly, and even to Voynich himself. Bye Bye Birdie. General Richard Ewell served the Confederacy well, but he was a touch eccentric in his personal life. His men reported that the general, well known for his delusions, fancied himself a bird, eating seeds and grains for meals, and spending long hours inside his tent, chirping. Magic mummy powder. 12th century Egypt was full of mummies. The ancient custom of mummifying everything, from people to dogs to bulls to birds, created a mummy excess problem. Mummies were buried under houses, farms, public arenas, you name it. It wasn't until Islam began to take hold that the idea of disposing of mummified bodies became acceptable. The Egyptians responded by burning scores of mummies for fuel. Mummies were also dug up and ground into a fine powder, appropriately called mummy powder, which was known as a kind of panacea for everything from nausea to epilepsy to paralysis. The powder was even used as an additive in paints, as it was believed it prevented color from fading. No respect for elders. 9th century Pope Formosus made a few notable enemies during his lifetime. One of them, his successor, Pope Stephen VI, couldn't put the past behind him and forgive Formosus for the injustice he felt the former pope had imposed on him. Stephen had his orderlies dig up the dead pope, dress him in robes, and put his corpse on trial. And, because the corpse could not exactly speak for itself, he had a young deacon kneel behind the body and act as Formosus, his impersonator. Wow. That's... I don't even know what to say on that. The mystery of the Carnac stones. Everyone knows about Stonehenge, the prehistoric monument of stones located in the English countryside. Lesser known, but just as extraordinary, are the Carnac stones, a collection of more than 3,000 freestanding megaliths that can be found in the area outside the French village of Carnac in Brittany. The stones, which stand in straight columns measuring hundreds of meters long, are the subject of many theories and much speculation. One myth is said that they are the remains of a Roman legion that Merlin, the wizard of the Arthurian legend, turned to stone. They are thought to date from between 3,300 and 4,500 BC. The stones are remarkable for their organization and their incredible size. One stone, known as the Giant, is 6.5 meters tall. Wow. The next story is Unusual Customs. Be around. It was once tradition in Old England, upon the death of a family member, to find the nearest beehive and tell the bees about the death. Doing so was thought to prevent the bees from abandoning their hive. Bad news for chocoholics. In villages in Central America during the 18th century, chocolate was believed to be the drink of the devil, and no one under 60 was allowed to imbibe under threat of excommunication from the Catholic Church. In other words, if you were to drink chocolate, milk, or chocolate, anything, even eat chocolate, yeah, church was going to kick you out, pretty much. And you would be the outsider. Which, honestly, I Yeah, I'd be that outsider. I love chocolate too dang much. Mirror, mirror. Mirrors ward off evil spirits, or so thought the ancient Chinese, who were convinced that spirits did not want to be seen in a looking glass. And there's also an, it's like a, I don't want to say myth, but some people actually believe that if a person has died, what you do is you go pretty much in that home and you cover up the mirrors, so that way the spirit won't get into the mirror and it can actually go ahead and move on in peace. As the bird tolls. Ancient Romans never made a decision without first observing the flight patterns of the birds that soared above their empire. This practice was so valuable that in very early times, areas were cleared of buildings and trees so as not to obscure the view of the birds' flights. The augur would perform a divination ceremony, marking off space in the sky with his staff and taking note of the bird's direction, speed, and song whenever an important military or political decision was to be made. The evil eye. The concept of the evil eye dates back to around 3000 BC, mentioned in the Bible in ancient Sumerian, Assyrian, and Voodoo texts. It is still prevalent in parts of Europe, Central America, and Mexico, and also North America. Historical notions of the evil eye fall into two categories. The intentional category assumes that the perpetrators, such as witches, warlocks, and medicine men, purposely cast their evil eyes over their victims. Side note, there's no such thing as warlocks, and the term witch is used for both male and female. Getting back to the story, it says, but some unfortunate souls are affected with the evil eye without knowing it, and the people around them must learn to avoid their wicked gazes or risk death, destruction, or despair. Two notable figures said to have been born with the evil eye were Pope Pius IX and Pope Leo the 13th. Sorry, I was like doing the Roman numerals. But yeah. Also, back then, a lot of the time the church went ahead and pretty much if something went wrong, they would say it was witches, or they would blame someone and call that person a witch and then put them to death. But that person would end up being innocent, and they just needed somebody to accuse, so that way it wouldn't cause mass hysteria or anything like that. But yeah, I just want to pretty much be real with you guys. One moment, I'm going to take a sip of water. And Let's get back to the stories, shall we? Keep your ears closed. Ancient Mesopotamians believed that the gods dictated each person's lifespan before their birth and that there was nothing one could do, good or bad, to extend or shorten it. At death, one transformed into a spirit or ghost, and those who had experienced violent deaths would enter living beings through their ears, causing grief and illness until the spirit was exorcised, a particularly violent practice itself. Evil blasting beauty. The ancients wore eyeshadow to prevent blindness, strengthen eyesight, and offer protection. Meanwhile, eyeliner was said to keep out evil, and lipstick to guard against evil spirits and poisonous foods, and to keep the soul from leaving the body through the breath. Chapter 4. Tender murderers and malevolent males. Killingly good tales of terror. Wild animals never kill for sport. Man is the only one to whom the torture and death of his fellow creatures is amusing in itself. Quote said by James Anthony Froude. Locusta, the poisonous. Those who control the cooking always have the opportunity to slip a little something extra into the stew, and the most famous fiendish cook of all was the Roman Locusta, who poisoned the Emperor Claudius about 2,000 years ago, so that her son Nero could become emperor. Stories about what method she used vary. Some say poisonous mushrooms, others say mushrooms laced with poison. Either way, she accomplished her mission. Sweeney Todd. A villain appearing in numerous English legends in the 19th century, Sweeney Todd may not be an entirely fictitious character. Scholar Peter Hanning argues that Sweeney Todd was a real historical figure who did, in fact, commit crimes during the 1800s. The story, as it has now become legendary, is as follows. Sweeney Todd had a barber shop on London's Fleet Street, right next door to St. Dunstan's Church. His shop was a simple one, room for a fair, having a single barber chair located in the middle of the floor, but Sweeney had rigged up an ingenious device. The chair was connected to a trapdoor beneath it, and when Sweeney had a wealthy customer and the coast was clear, he'd pull a lever that sent customer and the chair dropping through the trapdoor into his basement. At the same time, another barber chair would pop up to take the place of the one in the cellar, so that at no time was the shop without a chair. Meanwhile, Sweeney would run hell-bent for leather down to the basement. If the fall hadn't killed his victim, Sweeney would help along into the next world by murdering them. Then he'd strip the corpse, taking everything valuable, and expertly carve up the body like a butcher. Human flesh would be delivered to his accomplice and lover, Miss Marjorie Levitt, who ran a meat pie shop on Bell Lane. Little did the customers know that the meat in the pies wasn't pork, beef, or chicken, but human. As for the body parts that weren't worthy of pies, the bones, skin, and heads, Sweeney had discovered a tunnel and catacombs beneath the church, and there, among the burial vaults of long-dead parishioners, he distributed the grisly remains of his victims. Sweeney met his downfall when the parishioners of St. Dunstan began to notice a foul odor coming from below. A search of the tunnels revealed the ghastly rotten remains, and blood footprints led back to Sweeney's barber shop and Miss Levitt's pie place. When her customers realized that she had been feeding them human meat, they tried to lynch her then and there, but the London police managed to save her and Sweeney for the gallows. Oof. Wow. This just goes to show you, always ask what you are eating. Creepy vengeance. Catherine, the wife of Russian Tsar Peter I, had a wandering eye, and Peter caught on. To teach Catherine a lesson, he forced her to watch her lover be killed, then pickled the lover's head and kept it in their bedroom. Now that's just messed up. Granted, the other story was messed up too, but still, like, wow. Presidential poisoning? Did Florence Harding kill her husband, U.S. President Warren G. Harding, while he was still in office? Rumors persist. It all started with allegations of an affair. While he was president, there were stories that Harding had fathered a child with a much younger woman. Mrs. Harding got the FBI on the case to put the rumor to rest. Agents discovered it was true, which peeved Florence to no end. She then inquired of the FBI about killing someone by putting an undetectable white powder in their food. What was that powder? She asked. They refused to tell her. Soon after, the president got sick with what was believed to be food poisoning. No one else got sick, although they all ate the same thing and died. Mrs. Harding refused to allow an autopsy, and the death was officially regarded as a stroke. Odd beauty treatments. One of the most prolific murderers of all time was one Elizabeth Bathory, who lived in the 1600s in Transylvania. She is reputed to have killed more than 600 women and girls to drink and bathe in their blood, which she believed would keep her young. The niece of the King of Poland, she was not killed when the murderers were discovered, but instead was walled up in her castle until her death. Justice will prevail, eventually. In 1806, Becky Cotton of Edgefield, South Carolina, was tried for murdering her third husband with an axe. When authorities dredged the pond to find her husband's body, they also discovered the bodies of Cotton's two previous husbands, one dead from poisoning and the other with a large needle struck straight through his heart. An eyewitness account of her trial recalls, as she stood at the bar in tears with cheeks like rosebuds, wet with morning dew, and rolling her eyes of living sapphires, pleading for pity, their subtle glamour seized with ravishment the admiring bar. The stern features of justice were all relaxed, and the judge and jury, hanging forward from their seats, were heard to exclaim, "Heavens, what a charming creature!" Cotton was found innocent and promptly married a jury member. But justice did prevail eventually. Her brother murdered her. Wow. And we're gonna end it there, my dear friends. Remember, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It will definitely help me. And until then, this is Ruby, signing off.